Hey friends, before the show starts, just wanted to let you know I will be hosting our subscriber hangout this evening. That is Wednesday, the 7th of February at 8 p.m. instead of Thursday, only this week because I have to show up at a Board of Education meeting. So I hope that you will join me tonight if you're listening on Wednesday, February 7th at 8 p.m. If you're not a subscriber, sign up right now because these hangouts are the best. Patreon.com/PeteDominic. And get your tickets for PodJam in Las Vegas, March 22nd and 23rd with all kinds of favorite stand-up guests. Now, let's start the show. Stand up. Hello, friends, and welcome to Stand Up with Pete Dominic, where today I have one of the best, smartest, most respected doctors in the country joining me, bioethicist Dr. Arthur Caplan is back to join us. We talked about the weight loss drugs Ozempic, Pope Francis's ban on surrogacy and why it matters, Elon Musk's Neuralink and why it's broken, physician-assisted suicide, and more. You are not going to want to miss this very important conversation with one of the most respected bioethicists in the whole country. That is coming up at about 23 minutes into today's show. But first, a cavalcade of news headlines and clips. Let's get to it. That's what we do here. Tell your friends they want a good news rundown, news clips, and more. Come on over to the shed with Pete Dominic. I mean, don't come over to it because you won't even fit in it with me, but you know what I meant. All right, let's start with the biggest news of the day, and that's hard to decide which headline should be leading any news broadcast, any website, any newspaper, but I think it's probably got to be that a D.C. Circuit Court came down with a major court decision yesterday that unanimously ruled that Donald Trump does not have presidential immunity from prosecution. The 57-page decision notes the unanimous ruling is a sweeping win for Jack Smith and prosecutors. Any executive immunity that may have protected him while he served as president no longer protects him against this prosecution, they said. Trump's legal team argued before the D.C. Appeals Court that former presidents cannot be prosecuted attempting to throw out federal election interference case and extend presidential immunity to the post-presidency. Remember, they argued that the president could, in fact, assassinate his political opponents. Well, guess what? He can't. Trump has already vowed to take this appeal to the Supreme Court, but it's quite possible the court won't even take the case up because of how complete and unanimous this decision was from the D.C. Circuit Court. But huge news coming out yesterday. I'll get to some reactions to that. But the other big story last night was the Republican impeachment of the Secretary of Homeland Security died a stunning and embarrassing feat as rank-and-file lawmakers balked at what they considered a misuse of the process. New York Times says the United States House of Representatives on Tuesday defeated impeachment charges against Alejandro Mayorkas, the Homeland Security Secretary, after a small group of Republicans broke with their party and refused to support what amounted to a partisan indictment of President Biden's immigration policies. The failure of the effort was a stunning setback for Speaker Mike Johnson, who had vowed to indict Mr. Mayorkas and expressed confidence that he had the backing to charge him with high crimes and misdemeanors for failing to lock down the United States border with Mexico amid a migrant surge. House Republicans have been promising to do so for more than a year, but in an extraordinary and chaotic scene on the House floor, Republican leaders at first seemed to have clinched a victory despite 3 GOP defections, only to have it slip through their grasp when Congressman Al Green, a Texas Democrat recovering from abdominal surgery, showed up in his hospital garb to vote. And in a related story in other news, President Biden yesterday made a televised speech from the White House calling on congressional Republicans to, quote, show some spine, pass legislation that would increase border security and send funds to Ukraine, Israel, and Taiwan, despite opposition from Trump and his allies. President Biden embraced a proposal crafted by senators from both parties, which ties $118 billion in foreign aid to tough border security measures. The compromise, initiated by Republicans, some of whom wanted to block Ukraine aid while attacking Democrats for refusing to deal with the border surge. Some of them are now repudiating the legislation, setting it up to fail. More on that coming as well. A new internal Israeli intelligence report has concluded that at least 30 of the remaining 136 Israeli hostages have died. About a fifth of all of the hostages who were captured by Hamas in the October 7th attacks. In addition to the confirmed deaths, the report estimated that at least 20 other hostages may have been killed. The news is likely to add fuel to the push by the families of many hostages for Israel to prioritize a new hostage deal instead of pressing ahead with its invasion of Gaza. And in related news, Hamas responded to a ceasefire framework that could free hostages in Gaza through Secretary of State Anthony Blinken, cautioning that there was still, quote, a lot of work to be done. And a major news story out of Michigan that could set an important precedent The mother of a school shooter was convicted of manslaughter. A jury in Michigan found Jennifer Crumbly guilty of involuntary manslaughter for killings committed by her son, who carried out the state's deadliest school shooting. She was convicted on 4 counts, one for each of the students who were killed by her son at Oxford High School on November 30th, 2021. Prosecutors argue that she and her husband didn't do any number of tragically small and easy things that could have prevented all of this from happening. Their son was 15 at the time of the killings. He was sentenced last year to life in prison without the possibility of parole. Her husband will be tried separately next month. Big story, and we'll see what that means for the future of gun violence, if anything at all. But could it make parents hesitate to allow their kids to have guns or turn them in, red flags, and so many other potential consequences that could create prevention of a mass slaughter in the future. All right, a few more headlines. ESPN, Fox, and Warner announced yesterday in a major announcement that they are going to team up, these major media companies, to create a sports streaming platform. The new service will be available as a standalone app, and it's a major move for the streaming television industry. 3 of the largest media companies teaming up for this joint venture that will offer access to every major league sport and several others. I have a lot of questions about how that's going to work. There's an interesting article over at USA Today that answers them. I'll try to remember to link it in the show notes. But that's a big story from yesterday, as is the news that the chairwoman of the Republican National Committee, the woman who dropped her last name because Donald Trump demanded it, Ronna McDaniel, has told former President Donald Trump that she is planning to step down shortly after the South Carolina primary on February 24th. She's faced months of pressure and light insults from the disgraced former president, and now Trump is going to appoint somebody to be the head of the RNC, which is not how it works, but he commands the entire party. So the loser he's appointing is the current chairman of the North Carolina Republican Party, a guy named Michael Whatley. And the president can't just install someone, but like the Speaker of the House, they have to take a vote, and they're going to vote on the one that he allows to kiss the ring, and they will have to do just that. Anyway, the reason I say that this guy Whatley is a loser is because he claimed that the election security efforts from Republicans in North Carolina stopped Democrats from cheating, and he doesn't think that Donald Trump lost the election. So he's the loser, and he's going to probably keep losing. Paul Whatley is going to help us win, and probably is going to a lot of losing. Also, mostly losing. They call it the artificial intelligence. Sorry. And former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley lost Nevada's non-binding Republican primary. To who? She lost to none of these candidates. That's who people voted for. They checked the box that said none of these candidates. An embarrassing defeat in a contest that didn't even feature Trump on the ballot. The outcome likely reflects many Republican voters' preference for Trump in Nevada, but that state gives them the option to express their dissatisfaction with all of the candidates on the ballot. The Republican primary carried a little weight there because the state Republicans opted to award their delegates through party-run caucuses, which Trump is expected to win on Thursday. So Trump will win the caucuses on Thursday, and it's all a little bit confusing, but the outcome is still not great for Nikki Haley, who is seeking to get more money and more votes as she remained the viable contender for her next head-to-head contest with disgraced former President Trump in the February 24th South Carolina primary, where she will sadly again lose in her own state. And speaking of losers, former Fox News Channel personality and man with face who looks like it was made of cookie dough, Tucker Carlson released a video yesterday confirming that he is, in fact, in Moscow, Russia, and he's there to interview the president and mass murderer Vladimir Putin. Apparently, he's going to tell the truth about Russia's war in Ukraine, and then he's allowed to post it on Twitter by Elon Musk. You see how that works? Elon Musk working with Tucker Carlson, working with Russian President Vladimir Putin to get the message out to Americans that is not getting out through any other media channels because only Tucker has even tried to interview Putin since the conflict began, which is what he said. Of course, not even remotely true. CNN's Christian Amanpour pointed out that plenty of real journalists have been trying to get an interview with Putin since the war began, but he will only talk to propaganda outlets. So he found one. Tucker Carlson and Twitter. Thanks, Elon Musk. And finally, in a first-of-its-kind survey of 500 real estate agents by the brokerage firm Redfin, I just thought this was a really interesting headline, wanted to mention it, that they're saying that while location used to be everything in real estate, now it's local laws that appear to be influencing where people buy homes, according to this survey. Redfin agents say that they've worked with clients who have wanted to move to either more liberal parts of the country or more conservative areas. These moves have been influenced by gun laws, reproductive rights laws, and tax policies. State and local laws and politics have become increasingly important as the nation gets more polarized, with Democrats and Republicans drifting further apart on issues like climate, immigration, and education, the organization Redfin said in its report. So I just thought that was a really interesting headline, something that we probably assumed was happening, and now there's some data points for it. I'm just excited to rent a van and travel all over the country to see where I do want to settle. Here's now, who's going to buy me a van? I promise me that if you do, I'll come and stay at your house, I'll park in your driveway. It's going to be a ride. I'll stay there for like a week. Wait, till now, nobody's going to buy me a van? If I come, wait, no one? No hands? I don't see anybody buy me that van. All right, well, we'll figure out where we want to live some other way. But now it's time to get to your news clips, your audio, the sound from yesterday. And let's start with the president yesterday in his afternoon comments at the White House about the border. This is before the border bill failed.
Immediately. But if the bill fails, I want to be absolutely clear about something. The American people are going to know why it failed. I'll be taking this issue to the country. And the voters are going to know that it's not just a moment. Just at the moment, we're going to secure the border and fund these other programs. Trump and the MAGA Republicans said no, because they're afraid of Donald Trump. Afraid of Donald Trump. Every day between now and November, the American people are going to know that the only reason the border is not secure is Donald Trump and his MAGA Republican friends. It's time for Republicans in the Congress to show a little courage, to show a little spine, to make it clear to the American people that you work for them, not for anyone else. I know who I work for. I work for the American people.
Yeah, there it is. A lot of energy from the president. He, right after that, went off to a nap and had no problem with it at all. By the way, I think that it's worth noting that the president's going to be given a State of the Union, and really good point by Michael Tomasky, who's a great writer, that he should use it to address and confront Republicans directly for killing the border bill because Trump told them to. They'll boo him, let them, it'll be great theater. Throw right in their faces is what Michael Tomasky writes at the New Republic. We'll see how the politics of this shake out and if he does anything in the State of the Union. All right, now let's head over to Jamie Raskin, who yesterday was on the House floor making comments before the attempted impeachment of the Homeland Security Secretary, which eventually obviously went down in flames. Speaking of, here's Jamie Raskin starting the fire.
Gentleman from Maryland is recognized.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Mr. Chairman, we're here because the madcap wild goose chase to impeach Joe Biden has produced no wild geese. Even Fox News is lampooning the fact that their own expert witnesses repeatedly say President Biden did nothing wrong and there are no grounds for impeachment. More than a dozen GOP members in Biden majority districts don't want to go anywhere near that fantasy production. So the Trump-Putin mega faction, headed up by the distinguished gentlelady from Georgia, has been given this worthless trinket of a consolation prize, the opportunity to bring a slapstick impeachment drive against a cabinet member of unimpeachable integrity who has obviously committed no treason, no bribery, no high crimes, no misdemeanors, nothing indictable or even indictable, if you prefer.
Holy shit. Jamie Raskin yesterday on the House floor, and that, of course, went viral. And now here is Republican Chip Roy making more ads for Democrats.
No, we're not going to just pass the buck and say that, oh, any president can walk in and secure the border. I saw former President Trump make that allegation earlier today on one of his social media posts. All the president has to do is declare the border is closed and it's closed. Well, with all due respect, that didn't happen in 2017, 18, 19, and 20. There were millions of people who came into the United States during those 4 years.
Oh, right. Thank you. Republican Chip Roy, who's supporting the disgraced former president, but certainly not in that commentary. And that's not the first time he's been that honest. Appreciate it, sir. Now, here's Republican Congressman Tony Gonzalez from Texas on CNN yesterday with Jake Tapper on all of this.
This bill was 370 pages long. It probably should have been 10 pages. So let's get rid of all the fat and let's find a border security bill that is meaningful, that can get through the finish line. That's what I'm committed to doing. I'm not giving up. This is what I'm committing to doing, and I'm looking forward to finding partners that ultimately do want to solve this border crisis.
The fact that this bill is failing is not the fault of Democrats. The fact that this bill is failing is the fault of Republicans. I mean, that's just obvious to anybody covering it. And it is the most conservative immigration bill or border bill that I've seen in this town in 25 years of covering this issue.
Yeah, Jake, let
me just ask you this. Yeah. Do you deny that the reason that this is falling apart is because Donald Trump wants this as an election issue to use as a bat to pummel Joe Biden with? Do you deny that that's the reason, the root of the failure?
Jake, I was pointing out that there are Senate Democrats that have come out and said that they won't support this bill. So it isn't just Republicans. And yes, there are a lot of people that don't want to see any change occur, right? They want the status quo to keep going. When it comes to Donald Trump, the American people will decide in November. They want Donald Trump on the ballot. Many people want a change in which the direction is going. And many people are going to vote for Donald Trump.
All right, that's about enough. Thank you. That's Congressman Tony Gonzalez yesterday on CNN with Jake Tapper. And by the way, you might want to hear this sound. This is yesterday from the House of Representatives when the impeachment of the Department of Homeland Security Secretary Alejandro Mayorkas went down in flames. Speaker Mike Johnson had to take the gavel and make the announcement that he's a huge loser. Listen to the Democrats all cheering.
The resolution is not adopted.
All right, there you go. And here's another Republican telling the truth, and this is Texas Congressman Dan Crenshaw, former combat veteran as well. I think he was a Navy SEAL, the guy with the one eye patch. He's right a couple times a year.
I understand some Republicans are saying we don't need any changes to law. Then why did we write H.R. 2? Why did we do that? Why didn't Trump just shut down the border? If you just think we don't need any changes to law, he couldn't. He had to make a deal with Mexico, and he did a great job doing that. But he had to rely on literally international agreements to get it under control. We do need changes to law. You got to change those loopholes in asylum. You got to raise the bar for asylum. You've got to make it very clear that there's no paroling. You need to institute Remain in Mexico as an authority in law. These are really simple fixes that need to be done. And, that emergency authority that everybody interpreted, I think, as entries, you need to clean that up. You need to make that clear that that's not entries. It's encounters. Probably I would decrease that number vastly, too. I think 5,000 is way beyond an emergency per day. I think it should be closer to 1,000. But, reasonable people can actually make a good bill here. That's what the House should be doing.
Do you have high hopes for that?
No.
Why not?
Do you have high hopes for that? Reporter asks. No, he says. Yeah, because they're a joke. And finally, here is the always cogent and articulate Marjorie Taylor Greene accusing Democrats of hiding one of their members to throw us off. Of course, she's talking about Congressman Al Green, who was wheeled in from the hospital after surgery to save Mayorkas. But you know who else saved him? A whole bunch of Republicans.
I'm glad you asked that because, we can basically look at this as a game, unfortunately, and their strategy. And they hid one of their members, waiting to the last minute, watching to see our votes, trying to throw us off on the numbers that we had versus the numbers they had. So, yeah, that was a strategy at play tonight.
Yes, of course it is. It's always a strategy at play. It's always a game. And you keep losing. That's how politics works. That's how votes are whipped. That's how it's always happened everywhere, from the school board to the House of Representatives. That can happen. It is a game. You lost. Be better. All right. Two final clips for you. It's been 4 weeks since the stunning appeals court hearing in which Trump's attorney argued that the president could order SEAL Team 6 to assassinate a political rival and not face prosecution unless he were impeached and convicted first. Well, as I said, yesterday the appeals court finally made its ruling in their 57-page opinion. The 3-judge panel unanimously decided, no, presidents can't legally order assassinations. Here is Ellie Honig on CNN, legal analyst, with his reaction to the remarkably forceful appeals court decision. Ellie explains it all in about 2 minutes for you.
are three main arguments that Donald Trump's team has put forward, and they have just been one after the other eviscerated by this court. Can you give us what those arguments are and what the response of this court is?
This is a remarkably forceful ruling. I don't know if there's a good word in here for Donald Trump in 57 pages. So the court takes down Donald Trump's argument in three parts. First of all, they say there is no absolute immunity for the president. It is not and cannot be that a president or former president can never be charged for anything he did from January 20th at noon when he took office to 4 years later when he left office. That would leave us in a state of lawlessness. So they reject absolute immunity. Number two, they reject Donald Trump's argument that, well, even if there's limited immunity, I was within the boundaries. They say, oh, no, you were not. Not only do they say you were outside the boundaries, they say, essentially, they say in this ruling, what you did was criminal.
Inside the boundaries of the job of president is what he's
exactly.
arguing.
The boundaries of the job of president. Trump's argument is, well, I was doing things. I was calling other public officials. I was coordinating election oversight. That's part of the president's job. What Jack Smith and this Court of Appeals panel say is, oh, no, what you were doing was well over that line, well out of bounds, and indeed potentially, arguably, criminal. The third argument that they reject is Donald Trump's sort of, let's say, inventive argument that a former president or president can only be indicted once he's been impeached by the House of Representatives and then convicted by the U.S. Senate. Only then can he be criminally indicted. That was a creative construction that doesn't work for a lot of obvious reasons. I mean, this is why, if you think back to the oral argument, when you had these bizarre scenarios, what if a president ordered the assassination of his rival. Right. And the answer from Trump's team was a very unconvincing, only if he's been impeached first. So this court has rejected that. And I just want to read the sentence that jumps out to me that I think really captures the tenor of this opinion. Here's what the court writes, the Court of Appeals. Quote, at bottom, former President Trump's stance would collapse our system of separated powers by placing the president beyond the reach of all three branches. I mean, collapse our system of separation of powers is very strong language.
That is powerful language. That is powerful language. Gotta love me some John Berman. All right, well, moving on, and finally, tomorrow on the show, I'll have one of my favorite comedians, Lori Kilmartin, on to talk about her new comedy special, Cis Woke Grief Slut. That's the name of it. Emmy Award-winning writer for Conan, New York Times bestselling author, longtime stand-up comedian Lori Kilmartin, who, by the way, went absolutely viral for live tweeting jokes about losing her mother to COVID, is out with a brand new special. And I like to end the news segment on a laugh whenever possible. So here is a little preview from Cis Woke Grief Slut. Even the title's funny.
I will tell you, though, my favorite women right now are trans women. Yep. A lot of trans women have lived in both worlds, so they know shit that we cis women don't know. Like, they know how much we're supposed to get paid. That is valuable information. That's why a lot of guys don't want trans women in the women's bathroom. They're afraid trans women are going to show us their old pay stubs. Hi. Hate to bother you. This is from 2017. What the fuck? That's what trans woman stands for, salary transparency woman.
Well, there you go. A little bit of her new special, Cis Woke Grief Slut. Lori Kilmartin will join me right here on tomorrow's show. But right now, it's time to get to bioethicist Dr. Arthur Caplan. He's a big deal, so it's a big deal to get him on the show always. And we haven't heard from him for a while. Talked to him all the time the last couple of years, but the last few months just haven't connected as much. And I talked a little bit about why, because so many other issues seem to dominate all media spaces. But he is an expert, and that's what we specialize here in stand-up on ethics and bioethics and transplants and health reform and research ethics. He's the founding head of the Division of Medical Ethics at NYU School of Medicine. Before that, he founded the school at University of Pennsylvania in Philadelphia. He's the author or editor of 35 books, 860 papers in peer-reviewed journals. He's served on all kinds of national, international committees. A regular commentator and guest here, and a good friend of mine that he's become over the years. We've stayed in close touch. A lot to talk about with Dr. Arthur Caplan, and you can learn more about him. Just click on his name in the show links for today's episode. Such a great conversation. I hope you like it and learn as much from him as I always do. Let's do it right now. The legend lives, Dr. Arthur Caplan. It's been way too long since I talked bioethics. It's not like I cheated on you with another bioethics professor.
Yeah, I was going to ask you, you're stepping out on me.
Yeah, I've got a long list of my podcast is now just bioethics, and yet I still haven't been talking to you. I've stolen all of they're all your students anyway. They all look up to you. You're the real grand poobah of bioethics. So anyway, it's good to be here with you, my lord. Lots to talk about, and I want to just get your take before we get to the issues that you are an expert on. I also want to hear your take on politics, the health of our democracy. You pay close attention to what's happening in the world. It all intersects with your work. How do you see American democracy here at this point in your life and career?
Well, never worse. Never worse. So trying to conduct a political campaign for presidency in a sewer of disinformation with one candidate, Trump, lying his butt off and not really being called to account by the media. I don't think they, when they feature him, they don't fact check him much and they don't call him out much. And that's been true for 10 years. I think that the Dems are not making the case for Biden well. I think in Congress, we've got tiny group of MAGA lunatics holding everybody hostage, can't do anything because they won't yield and somehow leadership won't take them on. Even the moderates on the Republican side in the House don't seem inclined to take them on. I think at, local levels, we're still pretty divided politically in terms of governors, state legislatures, that sort of thing. I think the Supreme Court is a mess. So I don't know. I'm not sure if it's ever been worse, in my view. I'm old enough, so I used to say, well, here's Nixon, but it won't get any worse than that. Oh, well, here's Reagan. Well, it won't get any worse than that. Oh, well, here's George W. Bush. Well, it won't get any worse than, it's worse than that.
How much does what's happening in government and politics directly affect you in, I guess I could ask, both academia and medicine? How much? Because I think part of the issue for me is, as someone trying to cover every important thing, I'm spending a disproportionate amount of time talking about the health of our democracy. I didn't used to do that. And I used to be able to talk about healthcare a lot more, and economics and finance and climate and all these other things. I feel like guys like you would have been on the air talking about these real problems, these important problems more, and guys like me would be asking you to talk about them. But I wonder how it affects academia and medicine, all this political upheaval.
Well, so we all know that conservatives, partly energized by the Hamas war, right now are trying to assault what they see as the last hill of lefties, which is academia. So everywhere we got donor billionaires at schools saying, I don't like this and I don't want that, and you can't speak about this. The right wing, which used to be screaming for free speech, has decided it doesn't like free speech anymore, at least as it concerns Palestinians, gender orientation. You could go down a long list. So it's, free speech for me, but not for thee kind of principle.
Right.
Academics are afraid. They're a fearful lot. They worry. They kind of worry that their security is upset. Someone has found out where the ivory tower is located and they might come to get them. And in some states like Florida, they are coming to get them, right? DeSantis is like cleaning out the public universities. But I have to say, I'm not always impressed with my peers, my friends, my pals in academia. They don't speak to the public enough. They don't engage enough. There is a kind of club atmosphere to talk to one another, evaluate one another in terms of prestige and performance. But, we ought to be getting an enormous pushback here saying, here's what you get to do as a donor. You get to give money. You can certainly offer your opinion about how you want to spend it. And then, shut the fuck up. I mean, who wants to hear from you?
Yeah, you get a disproportionate amount of influence and face time. And if you're a big donor, that's the way, I guess, the world works. But I'm glad that's
it's not supposed to be the way, it wasn't supposed to be the way academia works. Donors, rich guys control our politics. I'm not doubting that. In some ways, as we'll talk about in a little bit, they're starting to control our science. Elon Musk and Tesla, Elon Musk and his brain chips. But academia was supposed to be sort of a kind of safe space. We could talk about things, worry about things. And if you ask me, was there a little bit too much of a push on being PC in academia in recent years? Yeah, but that was an internal fight and, wasn't driven by outside forces. Now, even private universities, the Harvards, the Penns, are consumed with trying to manage the influence of very wealthy people. And look, I'm not saying wealthy people never had an influence. There were plenty of people who showed up and said, I'm building a football stadium. Then someone would show up from the classics department and say, hey, how about us? We could use some professors. Don't really need that football stadium right away. And they would build it anyway. And, there's always been that influence in the sports side of academia that's been scandalously corrupt. But watching them march down and start to set the pattern for speech, inquiry, what areas can be covered, what's going to be dropped, it's bad.
Let's talk about what you deal with every day in your work, which is bioethics. There's a whole bunch of subjects, Dr. Caplan, to get to with you. But let's start with weight loss and this new miracle drug, Ozempic. And there's several similar ones. Apparently, you can talk to us about it. But you have written a piece, but you have a lot of thoughts about it. This is a great thing. It's the miracle drug. It's the magic bullet. And here you come to crap all over it, Caplan. Why can't you let us have good things? And what the hell does it have to do with Viagra? You had to work that in.
But look, I'm not anti the injectable drugs like Wegovy and Mounjaro and Ozempic. There's a new one, Zepbound. There's going to be more. What I'm trying to say is you got to be a little careful in thinking about controlling your weight just by using injectable drugs. First, no one's ever used these drugs for more than a couple of years. So I don't know what's going to happen if you're on 10 years. There could be all kinds of crazy side effects. Maybe not. I don't know. It's an experiment. You start your kid on them, which some parents are going to do. Even weirder, because you don't know what the impact might be if you start somebody who's heavy at 14 on these drugs. By the way, they weren't really approved for that, but I think, once you get an approval for something, you can give it to anybody. So even kids wind up starting to use this stuff. Again, long-term effects, it's a kind of giant medical experiment. The other big issue for me that I want to crap all over these drugs, to coin a phrase, is you're not getting to the underlying problem. And that's where I got to the Viagra analogy. So years and years ago, Viagra appears and its competitors like Cialis and so on, and all men are thrilled. They wouldn't even talk about impotence before that. They were so ashamed, but now they got a pill, and pretty soon everybody's proud to say, yeah, I went up on a website and I got myself some Viagra and I'm ready for Saturday night. Used to be you carried a condom in your wallet. Now you got a little pill to lug with you. But impotence or erectile dysfunction is a symptom. Right? It's got an underlying cause. It means that your blood flow is blocking up and not going where it's supposed to go. Could be diabetes, could be hardening of the arteries, atherosclerosis, they call it, high blood pressure. There could be a bad relationship. I mean, you could have psychological issues going on. We use Viagra today like a Band-Aid. It's just like, symptom went away. I'm happy. Things are good. But you're not getting... The body is telling you something. If you're having impotency problems at 50, it means you better get to the doctor and find out what's causing that. But that doesn't happen. Similarly, you can take these weight medicines and they work. The drugs are good. I'm not saying they don't help people lose weight. You got to change your eating habits underneath. The day you go off those drugs, the weight all comes back. If you're still eating too much and not exercising enough, you're not getting to the underlying cause of your problem.
One of the issues that you spell this out, but I'm not sure if I understand the math, the finances here. I think people understand to a certain extent how weight gain, being overweight, being obese can affect you in all kinds of ways. And what that means, people can pretty easily, I guess, experts connect obesity to health issues, to cost. And it's a killer.
Let me jump in and say 100%.
Right.
Absolutely. Obesity goes right to healthcare.
And so if you have a that can help people lose weight, won't that save billions in healthcare costs? I understand your point about underlying costs, and it's a very important point because your whole body's connected. I believe the kind of holistically that everything is kind of connected to the other thing. If you don't take care of this thing, it's going to hurt you over here maybe. And so, I mean, aren't we saving, though, still billions of dollars if we can simply inject people? I mean, one of the only policies that I heard really worked, we tried everything, and you covered this too, but when I talked to Dr. Aaron Carroll, he said the only thing that really has ever worked to get people to lose weight is when you actually pay them. That actually does work. But other than that, nothing really is a really effective systemic public policy that's effective across all different populations. This is it.
By the way, in order to get them to lose weight by paying them, you got to pay them a ton of money.
Is that right?
$10 a month. That isn't enough to give up your Sunday. It's got to be, like you're paying them $1,000 a month, and it's not feasible. I mean,
it's not
crazy.
Right. It's not not widely systemic. Maybe you could direct it towards certain, vulnerable populations or something like that, children or something. I don't know.
Potentially. And so to circle back around, here's the numbers. We spend healthcare costs associated with obesity per year about $187 billion with a B dollars. That is, you're treating diabetes, you're treating heart attacks, you're treating heart disease, you're treating joint disease. All those hip and knee replacements we see, they're related to the joints carrying too much weight.
Yeah.
And it goes on. There's even depression because you don't like the way you look. So you got that side of the street. So it's a big chunk of change. But go look at the equation this way. And this is how pharmaceutical companies are looking at it right now. If I take those injectables right now, it's $1,000 a month. Take it 4 times a month. The charge for Ozempic or whatever is $1,000. Let's say you got to go to a doctor to get it, or maybe the doctor wants to watch you. So throw in another $500 for a doctor's visit. That's very conservative. Per person per year, say $15,000.
Wow.
Obesity in America, about 40% of the population is obese, about 20% more, and I may be in this group, is overweight. And then you're talking maybe 300 million Americans. That might be 150 million, roughly, Americans. Let's say you put 20% of them on that drug. You're talking $500 billion. It's $15,000.
Why? That's because they're charging too much. They're charging too much for the drug. Government should be able to bargain with these companies, and it should be cheaper, and then insurance should cover it. No? What do I know?
Maybe like $1,000 a month. But if we just sail along like we are, this is so lucrative. You know what Eli Lilly's doing? They're setting up telemedicine to drive the drug directly to you without having to go to the pharmacy, controlled by their own doctors. They are looking out there and thinking, well, this is the bonanza. This is it. And by the way, worldwide, the sales would be like $4 trillion if you tried to treat everybody around the world who's obese. So if we don't get the price down, it's financial toxicity. I mean, you don't get it back in savings. You get something, but it's not going to compare. So you've got to drive the price down.
You also read about the ethics of direct-to-consumer TV ads, which is super important and somewhat unique to America, isn't it? I mean, it's a little bit of a gray area. I saw a lot of those infomercials when I was in Australia, but I wasn't sure. I'm not sure if they were I don't know if they were for pharmaceutical drugs. But
the only other country that advertises pharmaceuticals is New Zealand. That's it.
Yeah.
It is a complete disaster. I watch these ads and they go something like this. Do you have lung cancer? Well, think about taking schmitzutzenile apopropopop, and here's 39 side effects. And remember, ask your doctor about this drug. Well, if you have lung cancer and you have to ask your doctor if you ever heard of this drug, you need a new doctor.
Yes, right.
I mean, I'm going to come in and say, hey, doc, do you ever hear of this for my lupus or my psoriasis? I saw it on TV.
Our healthcare system is so broken. The ad should just start with, do you have a doctor?
Exactly.
If you do you know any? Call this number. We'll get you one. All right. I hate to move on past Ozempic. Although, just to be clear, you have to get the injection how often to maintain? Once a week?
Once a week.
Okay. Well, that sounds fun.
And by the way, we didn't mention it, but there's a huge corrupt black market already in this stuff.
Oh, right.
You can go online, and there are people making it and shipping it from who knows where, composed of who knows what. And that also is a cost that we have to pay attention to.
I wonder how many
people say $1,000 a month. I'm not paying that. How about $20 and I'll buy it in Taiwan?
Yeah, I wonder how many anti-vaxxers are using the
Well, they are vaccines. Remember, they are vaccines.
What are Ozempic?
Yeah, it's a needle.
But it's not a vaccine,
right?
is it?
It's not boosting your immunity, but you're taking shots. It's like, hey, really? You're okay with that?
Ozempic is not considered a vaccine or a vaccination.
No. A vaccine would be something that boosts your immunity.
Right.
But my point is they're both delivered by needles.
Right, that's what I'm saying. Like these people, I wonder if there are people, who knows? I look forward to that study. All right, I've got to ask you about the brain chip. Big news this week that Elon Musk came out and said that his brain chip is working. And this is a company called Neuralink that I guess he owns. It implanted a chip in someone's brain, and they were working under an FDA clearance, Food and Drug Administration clearance. But that doesn't mean necessarily that this experiment or any experiment is safe or ethical, even with the FDA's permission. It's supposed to help with people who have suffered paralysis, like quadriplegia from ALS. And on his social media platform, that they carried out a procedure on the first subject. He didn't specify which condition the person suffered or how severe it was or how this patient gave consent necessarily, but what benefit the doctors hope to achieve or whether the implant even helped the patient. And so that cloud of secrecy creates one ethical problem. But what is your concern? What could possibly go wrong? Elon Musk seems to have his finger on the pulse of what people need and want.
Yeah, what could go wrong? So Elon is funding this all himself. So he controls what we know. And we know nothing. He said they had FDA approval. I'm not sure. I'm not saying they don't. I just would like to see it or show me a piece of paper. FDA doesn't respond to those sort of inquiries. That's all considered private. I know that you're supposed to register your studies with a site that's maintained by the National Institutes of Health for all trials. He's not registered there. We've all looked. It's not there. So what really worries me is I think he's talking about science and chip implants, putting a little chip in your head that then you could send a signal to from a computer, and that could operate your arm or make your legs move or help somebody with ALS. That science is probably about 30 years away. And here he is running around babbling about, this is all going to help the paralyzed and the blind will see. When you talk that well, I'll give you a personal anecdote. 25 years ago, there was an experiment proposed that I was on the research review committee for to help people. They were going to put an electrode into your head, not a chip, just a straight, like Frankenstein kind of electrode thing going in there, a big piece of metal, and run electricity to it. They just wanted to see if they could find out where the center of vision was in the brain. Okay. They advertised this way. Are you blind? Would you like to see again?
Ooh.
You know how many people came and volunteered for that?
I'm guessing any blind person that heard it.
Yes. I think that's great. I would like to see again. So the number of people he could put in the study was 5, not 5,000 or however many thousands enrolled. And then what was achieved was you saw a flash of light and that was it. Then the people who had been recruited got pissed because they said, you said we were going to see again. When I hear Musk talking about helping the paralyzed to walk and the don't have limbs to move objects and the blind to see, I'm freaking out that he's doing the exact same thing that I saw 25 years ago, recruiting people like this first experiment with the false promise that they're going to get benefit. I'll say it here. If anybody got any benefit off the first use of a brain chip, it should be published in a religious journal because it would be a miracle.
Tell me about Elon Musk and the monkeys and why that's such a big deal. He used he used monkeys preliminarily. Well, but his company did. Wherever, by the way, we don't know who's doing it or where they are. They could be overseas. We don't know where this is, who he's partnered with.
But they did do some monkey studies, a few, and apparently they had paralysis in the monkeys, tremors in the monkeys after they put the chips in. So when he says, I got FDA approval, I'm thinking, FDA isn't going to approve it based on those animal studies. What's going on here? No answer, no transparency, nothing. So I hate this kind of science. This is what you call science by press release. It's like, hey, I'm going to come on social media or I'll have a press conference and things are great. We put this chip in this guy's head and he's thrilled and I'm thrilled and see you later. That's all you need to know. That's not science.
So the fact that there's so much secrecy around this seems to be as a result, and I have no idea what I'm talking about, of that he's funding it with his own money. Is that the case with any other like pharmaceutical company or academic institution or private organization that is funding research in medicine? Is this uncommon?
Super uncommon. Okay. I know one other case where some billionaire, you know who Peter Thiel is?
Oh, too well.
I believe he funded an experiment in the Caribbean to try and rush the development of a herpes vaccine. You can speculate about why he had that interest, but we'll let that go. And it didn't work, but he funded it, he ran it, and nothing happened. I don't think people got hurt, but nobody benefited. There was everybody until one of the subjects began to talk about it later. You don't do science this way. You got to open yourself up for criticism. You have to let other scientists see what you're doing. You have to let people, if you will, of what we call evaluate the protocol. Where did they put the chip? How did they put it in? How are they taking it out, by the way, becomes a big issue. You stick things in the brain tissue starts to grow over them. We can't get them back out.
Oh, is that right?
So what are they doing about that?
Hey, what are you doing there? If brain tissue is going to grow over it, and then you're not going to be like, how are you going to get it out there? We haven't thought about that. We're going to leave it in, and I'm going to control that guy for the rest of his life.
You'll be a big hit at the airports as you go through security.
Sounds like a Mission Impossible plot. All right, let me move on, and I hate to, because again, there's
let me just add
please.
This last comment on Mr. Les.
Please.
I wouldn't trust him to run this science at all. He's got a huge investment in the company. He's got a gigantic conflict of interest. There's nothing he's been doing in other areas like Tesla or SpaceX or his boring company to build tunnels that makes me think he's an honest broker.
And his personal,
and I don't think he gets
Yeah, go ahead. You don't think he gets the...
Yeah, I don't think that's the idea that when you're in the healthcare space, you got special obligations to the subjects. This isn't the same as saying I'm going to dig a tunnel from L.A. to San Francisco or something.
Forgive me, but I don't think he understands any of his endeavors that he has special obligations to anybody. He seems to be, ethically broken in terms of caring about. It's like, if anything, his ethics is I don't care about what happens to humans or the planet now, as long as we get to a different future. So if we got to plow through a whole bunch of human beings to get to a better future, it seems like this kind of cartoon villain billionaire attitude. Yeah. He won't be hurt. He's got an island in a bunker, and where him and Zuckerberg.
He'll be on Mars. He'll be on Mars.
Well, more likely he'll be with fighting Zuckerberg in some arena in a mountain that they share inside of it. All right, let's go to surrogacy, and what you say is the Pope's misguided call for a ban on surrogacy. First of all, we're talking about pregnancy. We're talking about wanting to have a child. We're talking about it matters who would even be seeking surrogacy. So first of all, who looks to get pregnant through surrogacy? What kind of women?
So if you're unfortunate, some women are born with no uterus. It just doesn't develop. It's a birth defect. So they need help if they're going to have a baby. They can make eggs, but they don't have any place to incubate the baby. Secondly, a lot of women undergo treatment for things like ovarian cancer, cervical cancer, uterine cancer, and hopefully, by the way, any women listening to this under the age of 50 will go get an HPV shot, because that really does prevent cervical and uterine cancer.
More importantly, hopefully people out there listening will get their daughters that HPV shot at what some
might... Anybody under 50 should have that, from age 9 to about 50, get that shot. But many women don't. And so they have to have their uterus removed, disease, and so they're in trouble. if they want to have a child. The other problem is that some people just gets damaged, say a car accident, and they can't incubate a baby, they can't carry a baby that way. So is it a huge demand? No, but it's not insignificant. There are thousands and thousands and thousands of women who fall into these categories.
What about age? Age being an issue, or any other issue that it's just difficult to get pregnant? Isn't that a lot of the market?
Well, if you have a uterus, it'll probably work into your 50s.
Ah, wow. I didn't know that. Okay.
The problem for fertility is you have to be able to make eggs, and that's what stops at menopause.
Fertility. Right. Yeah. That stops the fertility, and then it makes it hard. But if you're before then. So these are the people who would be likely seeking this procedure. And so the issue becomes the kind of commercial surrogacy. That's what you're more concerned about. But the Pope's condemnation is ignoring all of the rest. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah. So if you need a uterus, many women say, hey, sis, how about you donate your uterus to me because you're done having kids? Or occasionally a mother will say, I'll volunteer. I'm done having kids. You can transplant my uterus to you.
Wow.
That's called altruistic donation. And I think not only is the Pope wrong to condemn it, I think the Pope should praise it. Making a gift like that to a relative or a friend, some women help their friends that way. To have a kid?
Well, what would be different? I don't know what the Pope says about kidney or any other organ transplant.
He hasn't condemned that. And he's worried that making babies, if you use a surrogate or say, I'll carry the baby for you, sis, you put your embryo in me and I'll carry it to term, is disrespectful to the baby. Well, there isn't going to be any baby if you don't allow some forms of surrogacy like this. I don't know what the disrespect is. It's a wanted life. The mom who says, would you carry my baby to term for me is, wants that kid. Couldn't be more pro-life.
Real bad. Yeah. Super bad.
Super bad. So if you said to me, well, what percentage of people use a friend or a relative to help them? I don't know. We don't actually have numbers, but it's probably 30% of all surrogates. It's not small. So he's condemning everything. Then in the commercial area, well, we have commercial surrogacy in the United States, and it works pretty well. Could be better because the women who say, I'll carry your baby in my uterus, sometimes are poor. Sometimes they don't have their own lawyer to represent them. And it's interesting, Pete, right now we have a bill in the New York State legislature to upgrade the rights of surrogate mothers, to say you need your own lawyer, you ought to be able to control. And let's say I'm going to carry a baby for the Caplans, and then I find out that baby looks like it has a birth defect. And I say, well, you have to abort that baby. Well, I shouldn't have that right. The woman's carrying the baby, her body, she gets to decide if she wants to bring it to term or what she wants to do.
Yeah.
So you got to improve those rights. They're not where they should be, but we can do it. We're trying to do it right now in New York State. And in fact, we're even watching things like gay men who might use a surrogate to have a baby. That's another group that might say, well, have a child. Obviously, we don't have uteruses, but we could use my partner's sperm and we'll get an egg donor, and then my friend will carry the baby to term. So more rights. If the Pope had said that, I'm on board. But to condemn the practice, I kind of like this Pope. I think he tries to push hard in many areas. He's trying to take the church as far as he can with acceptance of transgender gay rights. I know he's not all there. I know he still hasn't given women anything like the authority they should have within his church, but he tries. He's certainly better than previous popes that I'm familiar with. But in this area, he's just wrong.
I'll say he's better than
he's condemning
previous popes that you aren't familiar with as well. Yeah, I mean, the bottom line here.
You mean the ones in Avignon, 1350?
I mean,
the two popes?
You don't have to go far back to. All I know is the ones that look the other way when the worst crime being committed against children. So that's what I know. And that's been going on for generations, and they knew it and they sanctioned it. You end this piece by saying at Medscape, you write, children come in our lives many ways. All are a gift. As the Pope has said, a child is always a gift. But let's not broadly limit how those gifts are delivered. Commercial surrogacy needs reform. But the need for reform does not justify prohibition, or as he called it, a ban. It's an important piece, and it's a really important issue, obviously. I will end the last issue I want to ask you about, is really important, is physician-assisted suicide. We've talked about this many times before. It's real important. You have strong, obviously, opinions on it. I do too. I'm fully in support of it. Medical aid in dying should be legal. It is legal in 10 states, and the District of Columbia have some version of medical assistance in dying approved on the books. So where are we on this issue, and why are you talking about it now?
So we do have the 10 states, New Jersey, Vermont, Washington, Oregon, Hawaii, among them. And a bunch of states in the upcoming election are going to consider either referenda or trying to push a bill through the state legislature. There's at least 10 more. Again, New York is one, Connecticut is one, Massachusetts is another. There are a bunch of them. So it's timely because it's back for reconsideration. Oregon and Washington have had physician-assisted suicide for about 30 years. I think they passed it in 1998. No abuses, nobody proven to be rushed off to the hereafter because they were poor or disabled or a racial minority or a vulnerable group. There are a lot of protections in those laws. You have to have a doctor pronounce you terminally ill. You have to ask for the lethal drug twice. You have to take it yourself. There's a lot of protections in there, and that has worked.
You can't use it if you have Alzheimer's or depression. Can be done without danger. Sorry, I think there's a lag. I just wanted to, you can't use it.
No, you have to be competent. You cannot use it if you're not competent.
Got it.
So that's a severe restriction. You also can't write your living will and say, if I get into this mess, help me die. None of these laws permit that. But we got to get them on the books to start the conversation. I'll tell you a quick story. My mother-in-law just died. She was in hospice the last 3 weeks of her life, and she was over in Jersey. One, nobody offered her physician-assisted suicide. It is legal there, and she was competent. Two, she was suffering even in hospice. They didn't give her enough medication to control her pain. Well, I like hospice. It's a good thing, although there are too many commercial operators there now, but that's for another show. You got to give people the right to hasten their own death if they're dying for sure, if they don't want to go through hospice or they don't have it available to them. It's just a fundamental right. It should be legal in every state.
Fully agree, and we'll see what happens, but people should support this, and if they have more moral questions about it, by all means, read what Dr. Caplan has written about it. I'm sorry to hear of your loss, by the way. I appreciate whenever you join me. It's been far too long, lots more that I want to talk about. Anything that we missed that you want to mention?
Well, we're still in the midst. It's an interesting thing to watch. The COVID fiasco over vaccines has led a lot of parents not to vaccinate their kids, and you know what's back? Measles. And measles is really contagious.
The fear around COVID has led parents to not vaccine their kids for the traditional vaccines that we've all been getting without very much of an issue for a long time.
So the old rates, we used to have like 97% childhood vaccination to get into school and that sort of thing. The rates are falling. There are definitely parents who aren't doing it, and they're putting all of us at risk. And it's a mess. Again, not getting enough attention from our public health medical community. You get measles back, it spreads like wildfire. It's the most contagious infectious disease of all, I think.
Terrible. I'm glad that you mentioned that, and we'll certainly talk more about it. All right, bud. It's great to see you. I really appreciate you so much, and we'll talk soon.
Good to see you.
There he goes, everybody. Dr. Arthur Caplan. Check him out. Say hello to him, and he is still available on the social medias, I believe. So check that out. I don't think he's active on Twitter anymore, but he is so great, and I'd love to let you let him know that you enjoyed him here. I'll forward the emails. You can always email me, standupwithpete@gmail.com. Dear Pete, love Dr. Caplan, always learn a lot. those kinds of things. I like to forward them on to guests whenever you send them. I do, and I appreciate you for it, especially you bumblebees at the end of the program. If you listen all the way to the end of the show, you are officially a bumblebee. Many have been doing that for a long, long time, and I am super grateful for it in a weird kind of way. It keeps me going, because if you do, it must be doing something right, because your time is valuable and you're a smart person, and I know that you appreciate it, and I appreciate you for it. All right, well, that's all. I appreciate you still being here, and I want you to know that I'll be hosting a hangout tonight, so I hope you'll stop by. I'm done now. Bye-bye, John Carroll. Please sing louder.
Well, there's a whole lot more of us who know us right. They'll keep right on ignoring us if we keep sitting tight. You got to open up the window to let in some light. You got to stand up. That's right. We got to rise up. You got to stand up. You got to stare the devil straight in the eye. We got to let him know it's his turn to go. See it clear and all you hear is a lie. Don't get up off of your butt, get down off of your fence. Even if it ain't a very friendly audience, well, they'll begin to listen when you start making sense. And you stand up. Stand up. No need to point your rifle to defend your town. Just stand up. Stand up. You know they can't deny you what you're laying down. Oh, you better stand up. Stand up. Show your face of every color, yellow, black, red, and brown. She's the place where every lost child will finally be found. There's only one thing to do before we stand our ground, and that's stand up. Stand up. Well, the founding fathers saw a land for all. They had to stand up. They had to stand up. They had a keen imagination for a crystal ball, drawing all the plans of stand up. But all they had to go on was the time they were in, with other causes for laws, and since they weren't even sin, they knew that change was gonna come before the change could begin. They had to stand up. All right, they had to stand up. We got to stand up. We got to look the devil square in the eye. We got to let him know it's his time to go, and make it clear when all we hear is a lie. Why you lying awake wondering where the money all went? It'll be the cost of freedom that'll go unspent. You can see him flee the scene of that experiment if you stand up. All right. We got to speak up, we got to reach up, and raise your voice in every way you know how. Don't be toes up, you got to show up. Ain't no better time to do it but now. No need to pledge allegiance to no wanton tribe. Rise up, show obedience to the voice inside, and listen well and it'll tell you not to run and hide. It says stand up.